Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Facebook. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, trusted guide, faithful servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. I hope everyone has had a fantastic Thursday. Friday is coming. I hope everyone has had a great day today. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about stress trauma in the womb. It all starts in utero. And this is something I probably haven't spent enough time on. And what triggered it is I did a consultation with a family this morning. And oh my goodness, it all starts in the womb. And we don't think about that enough. We don't talk about it enough. Hello, my fine, beautiful mother. And hello there, Vicky Oler. Please say hello to Dave for me. We don't talk about birth trauma enough. And it's not just birth trauma. I think we spend a lot of time talking about pre and perinatal trauma, but we don't oftentimes think about, and I like for parents to think about this too. We don't think about the first 9 months in utero. Mitch Gaynor was an MD who wrote a book called The Sounds of Healing. He actually passed away a couple years ago. It's an excellent, phenomenal book. He says, and hello, Heather, Dr. Gaynor says that as early as the fourth week after conception, the fetus is capable of hearing. And Thomas Verney, who's the author of The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, says that as early as the second trimester, the fetus is capable of psychological processing. So in 9 months, a child has already lived a lifetime through the mother. Hey, good evening, Lisa. Through the mother. So they've experienced everything in the environment through the mother. Good or bad. That's the experience. They experience the father through the mother. They experience the siblings. They experience the outer world. Everything that the mother experiences gets channeled through to the fetus. And what we know from research, hey Rachel, good evening. What we know from research, and Vicky, yes, what we know from research is that cortisol not only floods, because in high stress, pregnant mothers who are in high stress, it's called bathing, bathes the womb in stress hormones. So when a mother is in a high stress environment, and like the family I did the coaching with this morning, this young man his mother did not want him. She was meth addicted. She did not want him. And it was a very violent early experience for him. And he has suffered from that early experience, unconsciously, unwittingly. We don't realize the power that those 9 months in the womb carry. And when you have adopted children and foster children, a lot of times you may get the child at birth. You may get them at 3, you may get them at 5, you may get them at 10. Any real understanding, any real comprehension, therefore any real empathy that we may otherwise have had if it was our own biological children, because we know their path, we know their journey, is gone. We don't even think about it. And you probably, as a parent, you don't even think about it for yourself. But I like to challenge all of my audiences to think about what your birth history was like. What was your time like in the womb? And I have adults. I say, if your parents are still living right now, ask your mom or ask your dad, what was life like for you when you were in the womb? What was going on with mom and dad? How was their relationship? What were the conditions? Were there other people around? What were the circumstances? Because those early imprints are a part of the blueprints. And John Bowlby said this in the 50s and 60s, that the first 3 years of your life, see, we had very little real understanding about neurology up until the 90s. The 90s is considered the decade of the brain because it was this whole new dimension of understanding of neurology and physiology. So even back in the 50s and 60s, Bowlby said, the first 3 years of your life establish the blueprints for all of your future relationships. I'm going to say that again. The first 3 years of your life establish the blueprints of all of your future relationships. So if the first 3 years of your life establish the blueprints, the first 9 months of your life from conception to birth are the paper in which the blueprints are written on. Now, I want you to think about that. Because that child that you are loving tonight, and that child that you have struggled with perhaps today, that child who goes to school every day, or perhaps that child who's now an adult, is still operating from blueprints written on paper that have its own story. And a lot of times we don't pay attention to the paper. We pay attention to the blueprints, and a lot of times we forget about the blueprints. But by the time your child is born, their amygdala, their fear receptor in their brain is already online. Their fight, flight, or freeze reaction is already online. It is already active. And depending on what that story was, depending on what that early experience was, it changes everything for this child. So what I want to encourage you to do, I want to encourage you to if at all possible for you as parents, to ask what your birth was like. Ask what your story was like. It's so important. And then I want you to really give some thought and consideration of what your child's story was like, their in utero story. And I want you to talk to them about it, whether it was good or bad. And this parent I was coaching with today has 2 adopted children, and she said the older adopted child, he had a good story, so they've always talked to him about it. But the younger one, the one who had the pain and the trauma, so much trauma, a bad story, so to speak, they hadn't talked to him about it because it was so bad. But in reality, he's the child who needs to know the story the most, because that's the only way he can make sense of what he feels. Never doubt for a moment that just because the child is no longer in that experience, that they don't still feel that experience. Because that experience is still very much alive and it's still very much awake. The camera's doing something really weird. And I'm not even moving. It's like it's having a hard time focusing. It's still very much alive in their being, in the core of who they are, in their heart, in the cells of their body, in their brainstem, and it very much gets activated. So tonight I want you to just think of the paper that those blueprints are written on, both for your child and for yourself, and start a conversation. Start a conversation about those stories. And that's one of the things I'm really thankful to my parents for, is I grew up knowing I was adopted. We always knew. I always knew. And I feel like it gave me some consciousness of it that gave me some understanding, even if I really didn't understand at a cognitive level, at a really cognitive level. It just gave me an understanding and an acceptance. And I think all children need that. And obviously, as I got older, when I met my biological mother and I was actually able to talk to her about my birth story, it just helped make so much sense about who I am and the struggles that I have and the challenges, the emotional challenges that I have and that I still have to this day. The adopted child, the foster child, they've experienced a trauma that creates an indelible imprint upon their life, which they will have challenges with and struggles with for the rest of their life. It is just a part of our story. And it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to be embarrassed about, even really sad about. You should be sad. You should grieve. You should have the story of the grief that's there, the emotion, the loss, the experience. But you don't have to be sad to be adopted or be sad to be a foster child. Honor your story. Honor your story. Honor your child's story. And make that conscious. And I feel like it will just open up a whole new level of relationship, and that's where the empathy can come in. Then you can have empathy for their story and who they are at a core level, at the core level of their being. Because if you've not connected to that story, if you've not connected to the paper that those blueprints are written up on, then you've not been able to connect to the real heart and soul of who your child is. And so that's what I want to encourage you to do. Remember, in any given situation, we all have two choices. There can be experiences that are stressful and scary and overwhelming, and we can choose not to deal with them. And subsequently, we can be reactive to the challenges that those stories bring up. And we can continue to be fearful. We can continue to be stressed and overwhelmed by those stories. And in that reality, we are choosing fear. Or we can stop, we can take some deep breaths, we can slow down, we can face that pain, we can face that experience, we can talk about it, we can cry through it, we can be upset about it. And in that process, we can choose love. So God bless each and every one of you. I hope when you lay your heads down tonight, I hope that your bodies are restored. I hope that they are refreshed. I hope you are reinvigorated. And I hope in the morning when you wake up, the cortisol has left your body and that you are free from stress and fear. My prayer for all of you is that you will wake up fear-free. God bless you. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.